and welcome to the final Communities in Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee of this council cycle. And I just basically start off by saying thank you to everybody for their participation. I think it has been a really good committee, and as I said in the council meeting last week, I think the fact that we haven't been playing politics and we've actually kept it really serious and there's been proper scrutiny is much appreciated. Particularly like to thank Sean and Nicola, who have basically done all the work and made it possible, and all the officers that have brought reports to the committee over, and also Jeff for chairing it so ably during my sabbatical. I think we're all standing for election apart from Nick and Jeff. Are you? I'm not. You're not either, are you? Okay. Well, so we'll wish you, all three of you, a very happy. It's not actually. It's technically it's not retiring from a council role, is it? Standing down. So I don't know what the verb is for, but anyway. Wish you all the best, all of you, and thank you for your contribution. It has been good.
Yeah, just as a point of order, this is a good committee, but it's the best committee.
It is the best, yeah.
Right, take that one.
I think it is. Well,
by the members, not
not the chair. It's actually a really important committee because a lot of the stuff we've talked about is stuff that's really important to people that live in Northumberland, and it's also very varied as well. We have pretty interesting stuff. So thank you, everybody. The apologies for absence. Councillor Carr. Councillor Carr.
That's everyone.
Everyone, that's great. Minutes, we've got two sets of minutes from the 29th of January and the 26th of February. And this will be the final time that Nick picks up a point with the minutes.
Yeah, I've found a couple of mistakes and there's a point I'd like to make as well.
Yeah.
On the first minutes, that's of the January meeting, page 15 of our agenda. The first three bullet points are a repeat of the last three bullet points.
Yes, I was aware of that. Sorry, there was a technical issue. I was hoping that nobody would notice, but I had to substitute a page for an amendment within the minutes. Sorry.
Yeah. In the minutes of the 26th of February, on page 20 of the agenda, it's just a couple of minor typos. I think officers would ensure that the communications plan is synonymous with the incident response plan. I think it probably means like compatible or something like that.
Yeah.
What page is that?
It's just the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the first bullet point in the second section.
Yeah. I think compatible probably.
I would have thought so.
Yeah. Okay.
And under the fourth bullet point, it says incident support plan when I think it means incident response plan.
Okay.
And the comment I wanted to make was also on the February minutes, page 23 of our agenda. It says that a frustration regarding investment in what appeared to be unused cycle paths when some cyclists prefer to travel on roads. That's bullet point number 4. I took that councillor's advice and I tried using the cycle path up from the railway station in Morpeth today, and sorry, but never again. So crossing the side road, if I'd been 5 seconds faster, I'd have had an argument with the bus. It's much easier just to use the road at that point. And when I got to the roundabout, I had to rejoin the road and got beat out, which I could have done without. So until we improve our cycling infrastructure, I'll continue to use the roads. I would say.
Yeah. Okay, that's sort of point, as is your right. Yeah.
Can I just bite me tongue at this point, Chair?
Does that mean we can stop waiting them? No, I mean. Okay, yeah, you're always welcome to bite your tongue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian.
Yeah, I'll just come in on the minutes as well. It's more search and questions, page 12. So it's got resolved at the implication of a review in 12 months' time. Just wondering where would that review go to? So maybe a little bit more information on that.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you want to come back on that, Charles?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go back.
That report was specific to this committee. It wasn't a cabinet report. It was specific to this committee. So the recommendation would be for it to come back here.
Yeah.
Any further recommendations that might made, would then obviously go to cabinet. But in the first instance, it would come back here.
Brilliant. Page 16, the third second paragraph at the bottom. Let's see the categorizing the priority of rural locations. I can't remember having a priority just for rural areas. So maybe something to note.
Which page? Sorry.
Page 16.
16 or 15.
16.
Well, it's not rural areas, it was within the rural allocation.
Right.
So it's not just rural areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just coming back to the 26th of Feb. The minutes from that for page 21. Halfway down it is resolved. The leader of the council be requested the right to provide us of mobile and telephone masks. I was just wondering, has that been done? How we get a reply back on that one?
I need to check that.
We'll check. We'll
Great.
make a note to check.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Right.
We've just got one point, it's just a notice on page 22. And it's 1.6 down, it's just where I wanted the review of Cutting Road looked at, and I'm pleased to say that you're gonna look at Cutting Road,
Good.
the cycle track, and it needs to be stopped. But I do want to be part of that review when it happens, if I'm a councillor. If I'm not a councillor, as a resident, I would like to be part of the review that continues. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Right. So those comments and corrections aside, is everybody happy with the minutes?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Disclosure of members' interests, item 3. Nothing. That's good. And so we've got 2 items of overview today, and 4.1 is the North of Tyne local nature recovery strategy, and David Fage is going to give us a short presentation on that and then take questions.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. So the local nature recovery strategies are strategies which the Environment Act has brought into force. So it's one of several quite weighty obligations that have fallen onto us from the Environment Act. They're to cover the whole of England, but based on smaller geographical areas, which are decided by Secretary of State, and for which a responsible body for each area is appointed by the Secretary of State. And really, there's 2 things that the Act says that local nature recovery strategies have to do. So one is to provide a statement of the priorities for recovering and enhancing nature within the area, and to identify the sort of measures that could implement those priorities. And the second thing is a map which identifies existing areas of importance for biodiversity and areas that could become of importance for biodiversity. So the Act is quite brief but quite prescriptive as to what local nature recovery strategies are. I think it's also worth bearing in mind what they're not, because obviously there's quite a lot of discussion at the moment about a broader land use framework for England, and LNRSs are not that. They are very specifically about nature recovery. So as such, they could provide the evidence that will help inform a broader land use framework. but they would only provide the evidence to do with the nature recovery part of it. And it's very important to bear that in mind, because obviously how land is used is a hot topic at the moment. There's obviously multiple demands on land for housing, for industry, for agriculture, for carbon sequestration, for and so on. So please bear in mind as I talk, LNRS is very specifically about the nature recovery part of that. They're not broader than that. They're not an overall land use framework. So the Secretary of State decided that our LNRS, and some of you may remember we were a pilot for LNRS a few years ago when it was just Northumberland. But come the real thing, the Secretary of State decided it would be a north of Tyne area. So that's Northumberland, Newcastle, North Tyneside. And the reason for that is because there was at that point, the North of Tyne Combined Authority, and where combined authorities existed, they wanted to marry up the boundaries. And officially, the North of Tyne Combined Authority was the responsible authority. But because that was, well, firstly, didn't have relevant expertise within it, and secondly, was in the process of being superseded, the decision was made that in practice, Northumberland County Council would act as a responsible body, with the other planning authorities, so Newcastle City Council, North Tyneside Council, and Northumberland National Park Authority acting as what's called supporting authorities in the preparation of the strategy. And then, just for completeness, across the region, there's south of Tyne and Weir, LNRS, there's one for Durham and one for Tees Valley. So we're one of the largest LNRS areas in England, and south of Tyne is the smallest. So the steering group that's helping us as the responsible authority, probably no surprises there. The local authorities, the DEFRA agencies, the landscapes, Berwickshire and Northumberland Marine Nature Partnership, the Environmental Records Centre and Wildlife Trust. The Marine Nature Partnership, it's worth highlighting officially, in terms of the statutory process, LNRSs stop at mean low water. So they take in the intertidal zone, but they don't take in the marine environment. But because we have a lot of special designated sites that cross that boundary, they include the intertidal and the marine environment, and because over the past 20 years plus, we've been doing a lot of work that does cross that boundary. We're choosing to include the marine environment on a non-statutory basis because it just didn't make sense to us to stop it at mean low water. And that's what quite a lot of other coastal LNRSs are doing. So these steps in preparing an LNRS are set by DEFRA. These aren't things that we've come up with. This is the routes that we have to follow. With the exception of step 2. So the idea is that LNRSs get refreshed every 5 or 10 years. And when you do that, then you consider what action has been achieved in the preceding period, which is step 2. So obviously we don't do that the first time around. But essentially mapping our existing important areas for wildlife, providing a description of the strategy area and its importance, and then getting into the real meat of the matter, which is identifying what the priorities are that are needed to achieve nature recovery and the potential measures that could help deliver that, and then mapping areas that could become of particular importance. So where we are up to in terms of those steps. So steps 1 and 3, we're just fairly quick writing up or describing of existing resources, so they were quick to do. Step 4, agreeing the priorities and measures, is really the big chunky piece of work in all of this. And that's what we're engaged in at the moment. So by priorities and measures, I'll just maybe say a bit more about what I mean by that. So a priority, to give an example, might be to do with, say, the size and condition and quality of a particular habitat. The priority would be to increase that. And then the measures would be actual practical steps, things with a verb in them that would help to deliver that. So just to give an example, for peatlands, our first priority is that the size, condition and quality of healthy functioning peatlands is increased. And examples of the measures would be to do with restoring hydrological functioning by filling in the ditches, drainage ditches that have been dug across peatlands historically, and stabilising areas of active peat erosion, removing areas of self-seeded conifers where they're coming in from neighbouring plantations, things like that. So the practical steps that would achieve the priority. So the way we're doing this is we've held a series of habitat workshops for ecological specialists and practitioners to scope out people's view of what the priorities are for those particular habitats. And it was pleasing that there was a good common understanding of what the priorities really are. There's been quite a lot of work with farmers, landowners and foresters. We appointed a consultancy called Turning Moment to lead on that because we wanted people to be able to speak with people who are independent of ecologists, conservation bodies, local authorities, to try and facilitate a freer conversation. Turning Moment are a consultancy who do a lot of things like mediation, but they're people who have a very strong environmental background, so they're familiar with the subject. So they started with questionnaire surveys that could be done online. But those questionnaires included a box you could tick if you wanted to take part in a one-to-one interview. So those consultations have been undertaken now and written up. So we're now at the stage where we can draft our priorities and measures. So that's the stage we're working on at the moment. So we're approaching this via five broad habitat groups. So important grasslands, freshwater wetlands, peatland and heathland, woodland trees and scrub, coastal and marine. Now, the other thing we're doing, which is also slightly stepping beyond the sort of statutory framework for this, is to consider the areas where we won't identify any priorities. I think one of the tensions we found working on this is DEFRA is very keen that we prioritise hard and we don't identify too many things as being priorities for nature recovery. And yes, evidently, if you identify everything as a priority, then nothing is. But that then raises the question of, are we effectively and inadvertently deprioritizing a lot of potentially valuable work? So the way we're trying to address that conundrum is we're within those 5 habitat groups, we will prioritise hard and have quite a short list of priorities. But then we're going to have a separate section concerning actions that can be taken on land that falls outside any of the priorities, because there is so much good work that can be done anywhere. So we'll be working on the priorities and measures over the coming weeks. Next week, we've got our first meeting to start talking about the mapping side of things, and which of the measures we're looking at are mappable. Inevitably, some of them are mappable because they refer to specific geographic places or a range of places. Some of them are much more generic and just aren't. So we can't just map all of the measures, but we will be identifying those that we can. We're probably looking at around maybe 30 to 40% of the area would be regarded by DEFRA as being acceptable as a sort of maximum to be included in that priority mapping. There's a few LNRSs that are ahead of us. There's 2 which have been adopted so far in England, and there's probably 7 others close to adoption. So we're getting some helpful feedback from Natural England about those. And certainly so far, there's been a tendency to map more priorities than DEFRA is comfortable with. So that's something we're going to have to watch quite carefully. Once we've completed a draft, it has to go to Natural England for a statutory pre-consultation assessment. And Natural England has the power to say, yes, that can go forward to consultation, or no, it can't, because you need to address certain points that Natural England considers to be deficient. So if we go to Natural England, we'll complete any modifications they require. And then there's a statutory public consultation, a bit like a local plan consultation, which should happen this autumn. And then again, a bit like a local plan, there'll be a need to take some time to go through all the comments received to consider how well those relate to the statutory purposes of the LNRS, and going to make amendments as appropriate. So heading then for its publication, I think probably early next year now, early 2026. And then, as I mentioned earlier, all local literature recovery strategies will be subject to review and updating on sort of 5 to 10 year sort of time periods, but that's determined by the Secretary of State. So moving on to the subject, the important subject of implementation. Whenever we're dealing with something like this, we are, of course, talking about land management, which means we're talking about land managers and how they are going to be supported to deliver on this. It's disappointing to be at this stage and not to have as much clarity as we had hoped from DEFRA, particularly around ELMS, the environmental land management schemes, because they are absolutely critical to supporting farmers and landowners and other land managers on delivery. So we're waiting to hear more about that. Obviously, the combined authorities Environment, Coast and Rural Growth Investment Plan, which has been through Cabinet recently, has got an indicative funding allocation for nature and environment. Now there's obviously a potentially very wide range of demands on that funding, but we hope the LNRSs will help to shape the priorities for how that money is used. And because these are statutory and they are covering the whole of England, I think more and more environmental grant schemes, whether they're from government or whether they're NGO or private sector ones, will be starting to ask the question of how does your proposal help to deliver more local recovery strategies? As a local planning authority, we have particular legal duties to have regard to the LNRS in our planning work, both when we're setting and reviewing the local plan and making development management decisions. LNRS also interacts with biodiversity net gain, which is another big obligation that came out of the Environment Act. So where biodiversity net gain is delivered within the areas we map as being priorities in the LNRS, the landowner there will get a benefit and uplift. And then the emerging carbon and nature markets that private sector is driving quite hard at the moment. Again, I think LNRS will play quite an important role in shaping the delivery of that. So specifically for ourselves as a public body, another thing the Environment Act did was to strengthen the general duty that we have to conserve and enhance biodiversity. So we used to have regard to the purpose of conserving biodiversity. And somebody once described a have regard duty to me as holding a minute's silence and then doing what you're going to do anyway. That's been greatly strengthened. There's now an obligation to take action to conserve and advance biodiversity and to publish 5-yearly plans showing how we're doing that. And then complying with that duty, we then have to have regard to the local nature recovery strategy. So that ties the LNRS into that general biodiversity duty. And our consideration of that duty, went through Cabinet in November 24 and will be going back later this year, early next year. So that's a whistle-stop tour of LNRSs.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very interesting. Before I open up for questions, first point is just to remind people that we are in the pre-election restricted period. So just sort of, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be scrutinising. It just means don't frame your questions in an overtly political way. And also just invite Colin if he wants to add anything to that.
It's slightly different for me because normally when I come along to scrutiny, it's things that I've been directly involved in. Implementing policies and procedures. So this, because I don't sit on an awful time, obviously know about this, but it's good to have David and Ian here, especially for the next one. They're the experts. So this is about the duties that's going to be imposed on us to carry out. And it actually fits in quite well with what we're doing as a company, as a local authority anyway. Because, we've got our own environmental policy, which we took on board in the autumn. I think it was in the autumn. Because the leader is very, very keen on making this a very, very green county. So we've got our environment policy, which fits in with everything that's been said, fits in with the review of our parks and open spaces, and also our local plan refresh, which we'll be looking at all this. So this fits in nicely with what we're doing anyway. So nothing of the duties imposed on us is going to come as a shock to us.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Well, we'll open up to questions. I mean, I've got a couple, so shall I start very quickly? Just rivers didn't get specific mention. Can you just sort of explain how rivers fit into this? And then also, have you had good support from the supporting authorities? I mean, is it genuinely, are people getting involved in the process?
Yeah, so starting on rivers, yes, so they're part of the freshwater wetlands.
Okay, right.
And yeah, we had a really, really interesting habitat workshop on those recently. And I think they're a really interesting example because everyone who's working on rivers, their absolute top priority is around water quality. And that's a good example of why we need to take a broad view beyond our priority areas, because water quality is the sum of everything that happens in the catchment.
Yeah.
So with a lot of habitats, when you're wanting to manage or improve or enhance the habitat, you're talking about the physical area that is the habitat, whereas with something like rivers, you're talking about the catchment as a whole. So I think that's where LNRS can really help to identify the need for taking action at that much broader scale. And we've got a number of initiatives. So there's a one-spec catchment partnership project at the moment, and I think there's hopefully going to be one starting soon on the Coquet that's working with farmers and landowners across the catchment as a whole to address the issues affecting the river itself. And your second question, sorry.
The second question was about are the other authorities getting involved in the process?
Yeah. So particularly with Newcastle and North Tyneside, the danger was that they almost got squeezed out of it because Northumberland's huge and there's got lots of nationally and internationally important habitats. And obviously Newcastle and North Tyneside, very urban. And what's really important at that level might be something we'd be in danger of overlooking at the Northumberland scale. So with a lot of policy, you have to rural proof it, because you're thinking about urban areas and trying not to forget the rural. Whereas with this one, we're almost trying to urban proof it. So we're busy thinking about all the big important things in Northumberland and then pulling ourselves back to think about what's important within the urban areas. But yeah, very good engagement in that part.
So thank you. Right. So we'll start with Anne, and we'll go to you.
Can I just ask just one or two brief questions to start with? Just the when you look through the steering group, I think, well, I don't know whether it is good to have, say, somebody from either the National Farmers Union on or the Countryside Landowners, one of those on, because actually they're more applicable to farmers and landowners, so they do actually have a representative of body there. And also, just point to us, I presume when you're talking about the consultation with the farmers and landowners, how did you pick those? And which area did you do? Certainly, we've never had one. I'm a landowner, but also I've got landowner, and some of them areas aren't particularly identified. And there's a lot of biodiversity work going on there, with all kinds of grants and things available. So, how do you actually go on about actually deciding which farmers and landowners were you going to contact, and what was their response? Because a lot of landowners and farmers are obviously, heavily diverse into for this type diversification or improvement. And there's all kinds of grants available. There's some have been stopped. I know that, sort of click them on to stop like that. And, so it'd be interesting if you got a bigger picture about how, because actually you can only manage what people will allow you to manage. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And therefore you need to have the people behind you, the farmers, landowners behind you.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying, probably a good idea to have somebody from the, the CLA or
Yeah.
the NFU on the board, a steering group. Because it gives them a little bit of a sense of a part ownership, because actually they're the landowners, they're people who actually own the land, apart from obviously the Forestry Commission or people like that that you've got on.
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of how we contacted them, or Turning Point contacted them for the questionnaire and the survey work, we got in touch with NFU, CLA, Tenant Farmers, Young Farmers Association, Farmer Network, Coastal Grains, all the main land agents, all the main estates, Commoners Association, so about 60 organisations to say this questionnaire is up, this is where you find it, please encourage your members to engage with it. So we weren't choosing the farmers, we were just making all those bodies aware that it was there so that the farmers themselves could decide whether to engage with it or not.
Right, so that sounds very...
In terms of this steering group, this is something we've talked about a lot, and talked with actually some farmer representatives as well during the pilot, and the problem is, if we have the NFU on the steering group, that represents some farmers, but other farmers say to us...
No, I mean, you could see a CLA, whatever.
Or it could be
Yes,
the CLA.
whatever. You're always going to
Or
be...
the Tenant Farmers Association, but there isn't one body that does all that. So we decided in the end that we should work purely through Turning Moment, because if we'd chosen one or two of those, even, a lot of the farmers were saying to us, well, they don't represent us.
But they've all had the chance to get involved, and they've all had the opportunity to respond to the consultation, regardless of which their sort of representative body is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not blaming you. What I'm saying is that actually, if you want people to go and be part of our work with you, then you've got to involve them and feel as if they've had an input into it.
Yeah.
I don't know how many responses you have.
So we had 50 something responses to this. 55, I think. 55.
55, and that's from the whole of this area.
About half of those said they wanted to take part in one-to-one interviews.
No, but I think that we need to establish what we're actually working, because we just want to have a good one. Therefore, it's got to be the minority.
But the big frustration has been a lack of clarity around the support that would be available for farmers and landowners for this. I think when we were doing the pilot in 21-22, we assumed by this stage there would be a lot of clarity, and we would be saying, well, this is the change we think is needed to stimulate the recovery, and these are the funding mechanisms that could help deliver it. But we haven't actually got that bit yet, which is it's really difficult.
Right. Thank you. Gordon.
Yes, well, there were, it's interesting you mentioned rivers, because I chair the North Northumberland Local Area Committee, and at the last meeting, which was the last meeting of this term, there was a presentation by the Cooked River Action Group, which was formed recently, about 70, 80 members, as far as I can see. And they wanted support from the county council. Well, I said, you write to me before the 1st of May, and preferably now, then I'll see what is possible. And actually, they've got that letter, and I'm not entirely sure where I should send it, but what you're speaking suggests I should send it to you. Would that be the right thing to do?
I'd certainly be interested to see.
Right, I'll say it's fairly comprehensive. And what they're trying to do, improve the bathing quality of the Cooked River near Amble. where they have issues of its actual suitability for its multi-use as bathing water. It's like on Almouth. Almouth was completely unsafe to bathe in near the river outlet, but Almouth is very different. So given that this was the main item and asked them to send it quick, I'll send that to you if I may and ask you to take action directly with the author of the letter, the group chair. Is that all right?
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Great, excellent, thank you. It's just sort of apropos nothing. My wife was swimming with an otter in the Tyne the other day. Amazing experience. Nick.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I've got a few questions. First one is, you mentioned that one of the priority habitats is important grasslands, and I was just wondering what you meant by important.
Okay.
Unimproved, possibly?
Yeah, so from an ecological perspective, we have a number of types of grasslands which are particularly important. So the sort of old unimproved meadows and pastures that are very species rich, support a wide range of plants and invertebrates. There's things like whin grasslands which occur on skill-equal soils on the Great Windsill. So yes, it's those specific grasslands that haven't been subject to a lot of intensive improvement from an agricultural perspective that still support a lot of different wildflowers and invertebrates.
Thank you. And then a couple of questions on the implementation, both around planning and development. It says that local planning authorities will be required to take account of the LNRS in strategic planning and development management. Will all planning committees be required to take account of the LNRS, or is it only strategic development need to take account of it?
Sorry, I should have written that more clearly. So by strategic planning, I mean the preparation of the local plan and then development management, all planning decisions. So yes, it'll be relevant.
So we'll filter down all.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then the next bullet point says that the LNRS will help to target delivery of biodiversity net gain by providing an uplift in biodiversity unit value within LNRS priority areas. I was just wondering if that means that the developer won't have to buy as many units because each one is of greater value. And I was just worried that might lead to a smaller area of land.
Right.
Or am I wrong about it?
Okay, so what it means is, say a landowner decides they would like to develop a habitat bank and sell biodiversity units to developers. If they develop one that's within priority, they effectively can sell more units per hectare. So yes, that would have that consequence.
Okay.
But it hopefully focuses habitat banks into the areas we most need them to be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great. And then the last question was about the long list of priority species.
Yeah.
The guidance invites us to include locally extinct species in the long list. But there aren't any locally extinct mammal species on it at the minute. And I'm just wondering if there's any plans to add any, and if so, which species would be planned to add?
I don't know yet because we haven't got that far yet. The regulations are such that we can only include species which are on certain IUCN red lists. So we're not free to choose. But no, that's a conversation that's yet to happen.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, and then Brian.
Thank you, Chair. Here's a great question. The little map on whichever page it is north of Tyne, LNRS. The thing seems to be missing all two. I was just wondering where that was.
Oh, in their numbering system, I think it's Cumbria. I think they put sort of zigzag across the country.
Okay, so that's that bit. And it's really pleasing to see that we're getting the hang of this and we're actually doing something, but it just seems to be very laborious, doesn't it? You know, another growing season will be gone by the time.
Yes.
And I just despair sometimes when we've got all this to do. There's a lot of this seems to just, it seems there must be like wading through treacle for you. What you want to do is want to get out there and do stuff.
Yeah.
You've got to build this facade just to make certain that Joe Blogs are putting large where we ought to. I think it's a key thing to me to be. Well, I would be vastly frustrated if I was you, having put your heart and soul into rewilding, for the loose term, to be coming to sit here, rather than doing. So that was all. And the other thing, just I hope we're connecting with the Great Northumberland Forest. I hope we're doing stuff with them.
Yeah.
I hope we're identifying the right thing in the right place, which sounds as though you are. So, just I would just say, don't give up, just keep finding a way out, because honestly, it would do my head in this. And the only thing the only slight objection, I just remind you, in particular in this case, there is more of Northumberland south of the Tyne than the combined areas of Newcastle and North Tyneside. So there'll be more net gain to be had there. There's more local nature going on in that bit that's south of the Tyne than all of Newcastle and all of North Tyneside put together. So it does frustrate me somewhat. If you live in Hexham, you live south of the Tyne. So it's just, there you are. Managed to get it off my chest again. Thank you, Chair.
I think, yes, it is frustrating. But I think it goes with the territory in a country like England, where there's such intense pressure on land and so many legitimate, important things we need from land, that proposing changes to it inevitably needs a lot of thoughts and a lot of processes to go through. I think it's I can't see how it could be different, really, in the
You should just be allowed to get on with it, backfill later on. But there's not going to be thousands of people complaining about this.
Just be the one.
Well, I think what we will.
well, yeah, there's been some quite intense debates around, and rightly so, around food production, around timber, nature recovery, how it all fits together. And I think it is genuinely, these are really difficult questions. If we could make some more land, it would be great.
Move to Iceland. And making it all.
Okay. Brian, then we're going to come back to Anne, and then Mark.
Just wanted to make, you did, a great job within the Northumberland project and past tense. I'm just a bit concerned about, and I think Jeff stole me thunder.
Sorry.
On the people that will be sitting around the group. Because once you start talking about NECA, you're talking about cities. I would love to have seen a little bit of, say, Gateshead there, because they've got a lot of rural area, and I would like to see Durham sitting around the table to try and get that conversation going on an equal par. But I do have concerns because, and the same, I know the Northumberland delegation will be fighting. The Newcastle City Council will, do they bring challenge, or do they just bring, we're all in agreement with everything and we're moving on? So I would like to see a little bit of scrutiny, a little bit of challenge to it, and a little bit of conversation around it. The other thing I would say about the steering group, please be mindful to take in elected members of those areas when you're having conversations around various areas. So, for example, Northumberland, because there's a lot of things happening. You mentioned before on the River Wansbeck. We were oblivious to what was going on until seeing people just turn up with yellow coats and said, "What are you doing?" So the reality is, I think that if you're working in a locality, it's good manners to let the Northumberland County Councillor know, because not all Northumberland County Councillors are on parish and town councils. because we found that information was being passed down from my area to Ashington Town Council, but not to myself as a ward councillor. So that's maybe a little bit of a heads up. And same again, the mapped areas, I would like to see when they do come in, more detail, and if we start putting a project in an area, let we identify the areas. And the other question I was going to ask you was roundabout, the public consultation aiming for autumn 2025. I think we need to have the numbers fairly high, because this kind of consultation will only bring in people that want it, but it won't bring in people that would challenge it. And we are in a scrutiny group, so the reality is, they're all good things. They should come, but they should have an equal balance of feedback. That's all I'll say.
Thank you.
Sorry, just one other
Yeah.
question. Whereabouts, you mentioned the coastal route, but the coastal and marine. Is that the full length? And I'm speaking for Northumberland, or does it go further into the north of Tyne Combined Authority area?
So yeah, it fits in the North Tyneside Council coastal area as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right. I think they were largely comments, so I think they were quite. You got the answer you needed. Yeah. Okay. I think it was Dan next, and then Mark.
Can I just make a point? Because I do think everybody's talking about, there seems to be an awful lot going on in the rural areas about diversification of all kinds of different policies coming through. And it would appear that it would be much better if we had them all joined together to have a look and understand about actually what we're dealing with, because we seem to be, it seems to be dysfunctional in a way that you're doing one, we've got the AONB doing and something else, all these different things, got plans and everything else. And for farmers, landowners, something to understand this pile, and one might say bureaucracy, does that make sense? It's just actually understanding. So, and I think a lot of people would like to, in fact, would actually like to go down the route, diversity, in making sure, but we just have one clear map, because it keeps on saying, go here, go there, you need this, you need that. And it's a nightmare for people to actually look through and then think in the end. And in the end, I presume the DEFRA will say, have you agreed with all these before we give you any further grants or things? And it just becomes onerous on landowners and farmers, who everybody's stretched. And I just think I'd be lucky if this committee could have a framework of actually, managing the environment. And then we could understand what all the different policies are, where they're coming from. Strategies there could be government, could be DEFRA, could be anybody.
Yeah.
But it would be very helpful, because we just seem to be having one or another, and nothing's joined up. And I'm not taking effects on it, but you're doing your piece of work, but we need to have a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that came across most loudly in the farm and landowner responses.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you for the report. I think you've got some real potential on what you can achieve. But I think your biggest risk to moving forward is the land managers. With the potential changes to ELMS, which we're not quite sure about, SFI being paused, the general world trade with regards rural funds and profitability. How do you see this actually moving forward if you can't take the land managers with you anymore?
It doesn't move forward. As simple as that. I mean, obviously, we can, within the ecology bubble, if you like, there's a certain amount of land management on nature reserves and so on, but that's tiny. It can't move forward without wider engagement, and that engagement can't happen without the funding support that's needed to make it happen. And that really is with DEFRA, because we can't dream up a way of providing funding support separately from the sort of national agri-environment system. And this is the big worry about it.
Yeah.
Is that?
So much has been done over the last kind of 4 years, hasn't it, in direction of travel?
Yeah.
And my concern is it's just going to stop.
Yes.
And also, like I said, working with your trusted partners to the authority and also to the land managers, like I said, national parks and the potential revenue funding cuts that they're being faced at the moment. So what happens if we all just stop? Does this just get shelved for a couple of years? Is there actually a plan on what we would do?
I wish I knew. DEFRA has said we must prepare these plans. So I think we have to take it that therefore DEFRA will use them to shape agri-environment funding. If they don't, then I think the implementation process will be really, really weak. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's a very refreshingly frank, if a little bit bleak. But it's important. Is there anything to stop parish councils or town councils from creating biodiversity net gain land banks with land that they control?
No,
but there's no statutory restriction on them or anything.
No. As long as they've got control over the land and they're happy with that long-term obligation. Yeah.
Which is about 30 years, is it? Yeah.
No, that would be welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Great. Well, Colin. Yeah.
Just make a couple of quick points, Chair. I think there's something in here that was slightly glossed over. Northern Tyne Combined Authority and NECA lack the appropriate specialist staff, and it's been delegated to Northumberland because we're the specialist. That's the feather in our cap. Remember that. The second point, and I'm not on the committee, so I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just my own feelings, is on the steering group. I think Councillor Dale's made a good point. New duties been brought in to the people out there that look after the land, they're the stewards of the land, they produce the food, and yet they haven't got an input or a voice into the steering group. Now, I know what David said, that the NFU for everybody, but between the NFU, the CLA, the Tenant Farmers Association, surely there must be somewhere on that steering group who can have these people, because they're the people that's going to be have the onerous task of carrying a lot of these out, and the other food producers, and it's beginning to look like food production is no longer probably the top priority. So I can't suggest anything. I'm not on the committee, but I strongly feel that steering group's not balanced.
I don't know if we put anything proposal forward through the chair to the county council, or we do it through NECA or who. I don't know, but I just think that if you understood the rural areas, you'd understand why actually they want to have an input in.
Who's responsible for deciding the form of the steering group?
Ultimately, I mean, this council has had the responsibility of being the responsible authorities of the delegated.
So probably this council, yeah. And given what you just said in your answer to Mark's question about none of this works, and that, I mean, I know you're making a wider point about national policy and funding frameworks and things, but none of this works without the landowners, the land managers, the people that manage the land. Then that's probably a reasonable. I mean, is there any reason you can think of why we shouldn't suggest that in terms of other than the point you raised about making sure that it's representative?
No, I mean, that's something I'd be happy to take back.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, if we
Can I propose that?
you can propose that. Yeah.
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 Let Councillor Reid might on this last bit.
Yep. Okay. It's his final act. Thank you. Nick?
Do you mind if I just check on something that David said in response to Mark's question?
Yeah.
Thank you. You said that the local nature recovery strategy can't move forward without us having land owners on board. And getting them on board is quite funding. And I wasn't quite sure what you meant by funding. Did you mean subsidy through elms? Subsidy for land management through elms, or is there another sort of funding that's required?
Right, no, that's what I meant.
Yeah, fine, thanks.
It would be unreasonable to expect people to do things that cost them money for that money.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Can I just say that I honestly think that, you know, people want to help, and there are a lot of farmers out there who do want to do things. If there's funding available, they'll probably do it quicker. But that doesn't mean they won't do it. So hedgerows, you know, people are putting miles of hedgerows in. I think they're being funded at the moment. I know some people have got funding for the hedgerows. And they're going to be funded, you're talking miles of it. And it is being done, and it's really lovely. But there are people who would do it. If I said to you, the forms are so difficult to complete.
Yeah.
That in the end, you give up the will and just say, I think I'll put that aside for another day.
Yeah.
When you get round to the other side. But the big landowners are doing it. It's the smaller landowners who might need help.
Yeah.
You know, to apply. But as I said, the forms are so difficult to complete that in the end you lose all faith.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Okay, great.
Just a quick one, Chair. This is coming back to steering group. Obviously, there's been the big conversation about who's in there and the direction. What weight do you give to these people? Because we've all been in the steering groups throughout Northumberland County Council, and people always put their names up, but they don't get involved and they don't give any feedback. And I'm just mindful that there's some key players in there, and sometimes some of those key players don't engage. You know, if we go back to Storm Arwen, we found that a lot of people externally from Northumberland County Council didn't engage. That's my biggest concern. I think that's some key players. They can make some key decisions, good decisions, but they have to engage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how you could bring them to the table if, say, for instance, they had other things on.
So far, engagement's been very, very good.
Good. Okay. Great. Well, we'll call it a day on that one now. So you're okay with the recommendation? I think that's sort of. Yeah. And thank you very much, David. It's been very. Receive the presentation and make a proposal around landowner representation. And I think the detail, obviously, that needs to be sorted out by the experts. Yeah. Great. So shall we, so the next presentation is a review of the National Landscape Management Plan. And Ian, do you want to just quickly take us through this, and then we'll go into questions.
Madam Chair.
I've got some land in there in B, is that right? Can I stay, please?
I'm sure you can. Yeah,
Thank you.
because we're reviewing a process, really. We're not influencing content or decisions. So
I'm not a decision-making body.
yeah.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the purpose to review to bring you up to speed on the process of reviewing the two statutory management plans for the national landscapes as they are now. I'm sure you're all aware that in 2023, A and Bs were renamed as national landscapes. However, the underlying designation of area of outstanding natural beauty, which was set out in the 1949 Act, is still there. It's still the legal name for the designation. My colleague, my counterpart in the North Pennant, Chris Woodley-Stewart, just sent his apologies. He can't make it. He's in a meeting in Stanhope and couldn't get up to Morpeth today. So this is just to bring you up to speed on the process and the progress that we're making to review the statutory plans. Context: there's 34 national landscapes in England, and about half of them are undergoing this process now. Most of them are aligned to that 5-year process. So the statutory requirement under Section 89 of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act. Yes. There we go. Sorry for all the work on the slide. I'll blame Chris Woodley-Stewart for this slide. Section 89 of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act places the duty on local authorities to firstly prepare a management plan, a statutory management plan for land that was within their authority, that is part of an area of outstanding natural beauty, of which we have two, and to review that management plan every 5 years. That's the statutory requirement. So we're in that process now of having to review the management plans. So like the other 34 national landscapes in England, that duty, that the work of reviewing the plan is devolved down to the AONB partnerships. Most national landscapes, most AONB straddle boundaries. The North Pennines is a bit in Cumberland, a bit in Westmoreland, a bit in Durham, a bit in Northumberland. I'm lucky I only have Northumberland to deal with, so that makes my job a bit easier. But in all cases, they're devolved down to broader partnerships who better represent local people on those groups. Plan for the area rather than for the National Landscape Team or the County Council. And it's for all of those responsible authorities that have a duty under the Crow Act to have a role in the plan's implementation. Section 89 of the Crow Act also sets out that AONB management plans confirm the local authorities' policies in relation to the management of their AONB and for carrying out their functions in relation to it. What's changed since the last time we reviewed these plans is the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, which became law on Boxing Day 2023. And there's some amendments to the Crow Act that are contained in that act. It's still very new, and there's still secondary legislation to follow. And a statutory instrument, I gather, is expected later this year. But Section 245 of the LURA, as we call it, extends the duty to one that also covers supporting its implementation. In the past, local authorities had to produce a plan, they had to review the plan, but there was absolutely no duty to implement the plan. So that's amended that, which is useful. And Section 85 is also been changed under the LURA. It amends Section 85. And really strengthens the duties. This came from the Glover Review that renamed us as National Landscapes. It also gives a strengthened duty, or gave responsible authorities a strengthened duty with regard to national landscapes that they have to seek now to further the purposes of, rather than having, as David said before, a regard for, which is, you know, say a pause in breath, that's having regard and we move on. So now that was a strengthened duty. Case law will establish how that works. The first case has just been in front of a judge last week for Section 245. But it does give greater focus on plans, and it does mean that the management plans carry more weight than they used to do. So it's important that we get them right. So in terms of where we are, for the Northumberland Coast AONB management plan, our last plan was only a 4-year plan. I can't take responsibility of that David can. We extended the length of the previous plan because there was so much change and fluctuation at the time, and it was difficult to write a plan with so much going on. But we wrote a 4-year plan just to keep it in sync with the majority of the AONBs in the country. So we don't legally need to review that plan until 2025, 5-year revision. However, we did need to extend the life of the plan by 1 year to make sure that there was a live plan in place, which we did, and that came to Cabinet to review that. The North Pennines plan has also been delayed by a year. The reason that we're delaying these plans was we were waiting for confirmation from Natural England with revised guidance on how we write these plans. We're still waiting for confirmation from Natural England on how we write these plans, so we've just decided to go ahead and write them anyway. But also we knew that there was likely changes to the duties and other powers and purposes within the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, which has happened now, so we can write our plans with a bit more confidence. So a little bit more on the significance. As I said, the management plans are statutory documents. They need to be adopted by the local authorities, and that formulates the local authorities' policies for the management of the designated areas. The principal vehicle for ensuring that the statutory purpose of the designation is met, and are also taken into consideration through the planning process. And post-LURA, this is going to be the main document for articulating what might constitute setting out what is seeking to further the purposes. So the management plans will effectively set out the underpinning legal framework, which I've already discussed, the components of natural beauty. So natural beauty is a very difficult term for people to get their heads around. What is natural? You know, you could look at the land, and virtually all of the land in national landscapes has been modified by human behaviour over the last 8,000 years. What is natural? So it sets out what is natural. It's more than just the view. It's more than just beauty. It's all of those component parts. So it's what we call in the Northumberland Coast Management Plan, the core characteristics of the area, or the special qualities of the area that sets it out. They were the reason it was designated in the first place, in our case in 1958. Sets out some forces for change, things like LURA, and the Protected Landscapes Targets and Outcomes Framework, which is new. It sets out desired outcomes, and as David said, exactly the same as the LNRS, sets out outcomes, and then it sets out measures for how we're going to achieve them in the same approach. And it also will set out monitoring and targets, again, which reflects the new Protected Landscapes Targets and Outcomes Framework, which is for both national parks and national landscapes. In terms of the timescale, so we're busily writing the plans as we speak, and they'll go through technical stakeholders and the partnership. Certainly hope to have a consultation draft to the partnership in June. North Pennine, similar timescale, to then take it out for consultation for an 8-week consultation period over the summer. Bring back those consultation responses in the autumn, redraft the plan, and hopefully bring a final plan to Cabinet for adoption on either the 9th or the 16th date to be agreed. Following that revision process. Just a little bit on the format of the plan. The North Pennines National Landscape have taken the decision to have a wholly electronic plan on a dedicated website, which will allow for revised versions of the plan and to add bits and bobs to it. We're not as technically advanced on the Northumberland coast to that yet. We have got a new website, but it requires some work and requires some money, which we may not have. So ours will be in a traditional kind of PDF format available as a download, and we'll print a few copies for the likes of parish councils and elected members, that kind of thing. Similarly, the Pennines plan will include revised versions of their planning guidance and their building design guide. Will include our revised highways and public realm guidance and our nature recovery plan. The nature recovery plan is a kind of adds more granularity to the LNRS. So it's like an LNRS, but in more detail for the national landscapes. And that was something that all national landscapes set out that they would do ahead of this management plan review. With a pretty picture. And our contact details, both Chris and my contact details are on that slide as well.
Great, excellent. That's very interesting. Thank you. Questions? Nick.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. When you said that the North Pennines plan had been delayed by a year, did you mean that it also expired last year and is due for review this year?
It did expire, but they extended the life of the plan by 12 months.
Yeah. And what does that involve? Just changing the date on the front, or what does that involve?
For the Pennines, the plan would pretty much remained unchanged. So DEFRA gave us guidance in terms of delaying the process. DEFRA was supportive of delaying the process, recognising that the Level and Urban Regeneration Act was going to come in and would radically change plans, and also the delay in receiving guidance from Natural England. So it literally was a one-page insert into the plan, which gave it was still a live plan for the next year. Slightly different process on the coast in that we had a plan. It just really just the date changed on the front of it for that purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. And says that the on page 5 presentation that the text of the plan is currently being drafted by the 2 national landscape teams in concert with other technical stakeholders. And I sit on the local access board, And I was just wondering if the Local Access Forum is or will be involved as a stakeholder so that access gets a little.
Can't speak on behalf of the North Pennines, but certainly in the Northumberland Coast, although we have just undertaken a governance review and we have a vacancy on our partnership for broader access for all seat. We do have, our chair actually is the recreation and access representative. So whilst we haven't got a direct representative from the LAF, our chair covers that, and we would obviously take the draft plan to the LAF for their contribution.
Okay, so the draft plan for the Northumberland Coast will come to the LAF,
Yes,
but you're not sure about the North Pennines.
I'm sure it will. They have an access working group which is chaired by Colin, might know better than me. It's chaired by their access rep. Sure, they'll be involved with the LAF as well.
Great, thanks. And then the last question was on the second last page about the plan formats. It's great to see that that both plans will include nature recovery plans. The Environment Act, as I think David said earlier, the Environment Act places a duty on public authorities to conserve and enhance biodiversity. Just wondering if that applies to national landscapes as well. Because I read that the current purpose is to conserve and enhance natural beauty. In fact, you mentioned that. Yeah, but I'm just wondering if because of the Environment Act, the current purpose of national landscapes is also to conserve and enhance biodiversity.
So I would say that biodiversity is a component part of natural beauty, and we know us to conserve and enhance. So yes.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you for the presentation. Again, are you comfortable with the 1-year extension that you've put on? The reason why I'm bringing that up, when we start talking about levelling up and the regeneration app, so the levelling up programme, some of the funding has been extended into a year. There's also other projects that have been extended into 2, 3, and 4 years. So it's just finding that comfortable one. And the question is, do you get any money off the levelling up programme itself, or is it just the act in itself?
So this is, yeah, the act slightly different to the levelling up funding. With this, we could kick the can down the line forever, waiting for clarity on a whole host of things. We have to, at some stage, stop and write a plan, and that's what we're doing now. But recognising that, you know, things are going to change probably quite rapidly over the next 2 to 3 years, and quite quickly the plan becomes not redundant, but you know, the focus changes very much. But you've got to stop and write a plan at some stage, otherwise you would never write it, waiting for you know, decisions from government.
Yeah.
Just
coming back to that, Chair, was just if it was a comfortable time to get a good plan, and you're in your comfort zone to deliver that plan. But sometimes an extension, you mentioned yourself, kicking the can down the road. So the reality is, if there's enough time, you can pull it together. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't want a year's time to say I have to have another extension on this.
It's the right time to do it now. But yeah, bear in mind that a lot could change within the lifespan of this plan. I could do as well. In terms of funding, we have had some levelling up funding through RAMP. So that the RAMP money was that stands for Rural Asset Multiplier Programme, and that was targeted at the southwest corner of the Northumberland National Park and the Northumberland Coast National Landscape in particular.
The reason why I brought up the funding is I'm aware that under that particular scheme, extensions of funding, because a lot of the time funding would come in late and you are behind yourself trying to deliver the programme. So the reality is you extending it, and also any funding that would come from that direction could be extended as well. Thank you. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you very much. Anne, did you have a question? I wasn't quite sure whether you were. No. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No. Colin, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. No, this what we've been talking about here is completely different from the first one we talked about. I mean, that's on the North Pennines ONB. So we've got two in Northumberland. We've got the coastal one that Ian's the top man in. You've got obviously the coast, lowland areas. You've got pressure from tourism, second homes, these sorts of things that are all discussed in the meetings. The North Pennine ones is completely different. It's part of Cumbria, Northumberland, and Durham. It's upland areas, hills. Some of them aren't natural hills. They're all spoil heaps from the lead mines, silver mines. Lots of water up there, natural lakes and man-made dams and things. And the big thing up there is the industrial heritage from the, like from the old mining days. But the one thing I do notice is and I'm no longer on the coastal one, so I can't comment on it, but the North Pennines one, how closely they work with farmers. There's farmers on the committee.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the elected members, a lot of elected members on there, the rural elected members. And nothing is imposed on the farmers and landowners. It's all in partnership and feeding grants into farmers to do, like hay meadows, all these sorts of things to look after the natural environment. And it's a nice way of working. It feels very local. And I must say, I did say at the start of this meeting, I don't know too much about the first one, but the first one feels a little bit big brotherish to me. No input from the people who are actually out there at the moment. So, and as far as the management plans are concerned, yes, obvious reasons have had to delay them because things behind the scenes at DEFRA haven't come forward. So, and I think the funding situations has changed as well. They've had an increase in, certainly North Pennines has had an increase in funding, but I think it's an increase in capital funding, not revenue, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So big changes going on, but it's certainly a good way to be working. The AONBs, I mean, and the coastal one's just the same. They work with the people there because it's local and local people on it.
Yeah, so I think both reports, all eyes are on DEFRA, but in the meantime, you're cracking on and getting its stuff done, and which is great. Thank you, Colin. Great. I think that that was really interesting. Thank you both, and that's a very good way to end this electoral cycle. The next item on the agenda is the monitoring report. Dawn, is there anything you probably not a lot to say because we'll all be different next?
Well, there's anything to say because you presented it to council last week as part of the annual report.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
To add that, Chair.
Yeah, great, excellent. And there is, oh, sorry, Anne.
No, can I just say, because I think, just to say quickly, over the last 3 years since I've been on the committee, we actually have had what I call very, very important issues to discuss. And they're not just ones for, agreement and this, that, and the other things we're ongoing having conversations about. So I would ask that we could run this monitoring report over the 25. The new committee can pick them up.
Yeah.
What I don't want them to do is drop off.
Yeah.
So when I said that I would like to see, for instance, highways maintenance back on.
Yeah.
I think because the Northumberland Fire and Rescue Services having concerns at the moment, that should be put back on. The other one is the common allocation policy.
Yeah.
Stormar will not be with the emergency plan because if we have an emergency, we need to be there now.
Yeah.
Not whenever.
Yeah.
And the other one is about the places for people. I haven't seen a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that needs further explanation.
I think all of this stuff will just roll forward, and the new committee will pick through it and agree its own priorities. But the starting point for that process will be what we leave them today.
I think that it would be good if we could have briefing paper on them all because it's so important. These aren't issues that are going away. They're real concerns to the public.
Well, you never know. You may be on the committee, so you may be chair of the committee.
All I want to do, I hate to see when we have the end of a whole for things just disappear.
Yeah.
People don't understand. I've seen things going backwards and forwards. In inequality working group, we've been on and out, dropped, come back again.
No, I agree.
But we need to have some consistency if we're actually going to make any headway.
And I think I'm fairly certain that not all of the people in this room are going to lose their seats. So there will be at least some of us to be able to make that point as the new administration gets going with its programme, and this new committee gets going with its programme. So
The boy
yeah.
can dream, Chair.
Never say never.
Never.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.
Just to confirm that tomorrow I will sit and draft the work programme for the new committee and the new chair to sort of go through and say, well, this is what would have happened. Do you want to prioritise this, or is there something else you would rather do instead? So all of that will be laid out across next year, and it's up to the new committee, the new chair, to actually yes, no.
So
There's enough of us about, whoever's about, to actually say, hey, I think this needs to be looked at, and take a bit of guidance from those people who've been here a bit.
Well, the new committee won't have any excuse to not to hit the ground running. Oh, Liz Truss said to hit the ground. Eileen.
Yeah, through the week I contacted Nicola and Sean, because I think, and I would like to see it on next time, Park and Services Review.
I think we saw the email, and it was a specific point around a particular thing, which obviously I think is not really the specific query is not a thing for scrutiny, but the broader point around residential parking is something that I'm sure that you can write to the chair of the new.
I think the whole parking.
Yes, yeah. So the purpose,
whole thing. Needs refreshing and looking at.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll certainly add it to the draft and see what it takes us.
So anyway, I think on that. Sorry, Nick. The final word. Hang on. The final word. Sorry.
Just a quick question and a quick comment. On the 29th of January, we resolved that a communications plan and/or training session will be held for elected county councillors and town and parish councillors. What exactly is that communications plan that we're talking about? Is that a plan for how county, town and parish councils will communicate the outcome of the review of regulation and important activities? Just that I didn't understand. Obviously, the training session, that makes sense. But what's the communication plan?
I was about enforcement and cross-working with public protection and everything.
Which one was it? Sorry.
Protection.
Which item?
It's row 10. Page 51.
We have that conversation. Is that public protection where we had all the best reviews coming in about public protection and enforcement and everything else?
I did receive an email from Rob Murphy to say that there is a programme of events already put in place for new councillors.
And I think what that meant specifically, Nick, was communications to councillors to explain what the new enforcement activities was. So, and that's why it was and/or training plan, because actually you wouldn't need to, if you were doing the training, if it was part of the training plan, there would obviously be communication as part of that training plan.
So training or communication.
I think you also said there'll be a mixture of training and policy conferences. Because there's
Thank you.
Great.
Just a comment I wanted to make was when the new terms of reference are agreed, we all know that we need to update them. So we change active Northumberland to places leisure, etc. But could I also ask that we clarify what the third bullet point means? At the minute we've got conservation. And I think we just need to clarify whether that's conservation of the built or natural environment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is something I've mentioned before. I just wanted to remind you.
It needs planning.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And I hope, Nick, you're going to be watching these meetings from your van as you travel around Europe.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just looking for an update with regards to planning enforcement.
Yes.
That we requested that went to Cabinet. I've not seen any documentation written about that or recommendations.
So I after that meeting that we had where we recommended that there was extra resource putting into planning enforcement, I went to Cabinet and presented that. They agreed it. So we need an update. Could you ask Rob to circulate it? Ideally, could we have that before before the election? I mean, it's just a question of probably a couple of sentences telling us what's happened.
Yeah.
And then,
Chair, I just come in on planning. As the chair of the Southeast Area Planning, from day one, I've tried to get for members you know, 4 years ago, it was fairly late, the attendance and.
Yeah.
But we need to have members up to date with up-to-date changes in legislation.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, I've got yes, and as my members on the Southeast Area Committee, it was always minuted in the local acts.
Yeah.
I was very concerned, and I think a programme has to be put in place to hit the ground running, but especially new members.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of seasoned, well-experienced councillors standing down.
Yeah.
And a lot of those committees were showed up.
I mean, there has been, in fact, one of the, David, you did some training on BNG, didn't you, for members, but, and there is a training programme being written at the moment for new councillors. So Sean, can you just make sure that it includes plenty on planning?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Rob's email to me said last week. It said, just to be clear, we have agreed to run 7 planning conferences and training events post-election.
Right, okay.
But what I asked is that when we don't have a planning application or any planning work, that we have those training sessions at that particular time, because everybody's logged in. And the reality is we do face-to-face now, but the training could be on Teams and pay that. So we wouldn't be using officer time, travelling, whatever. So we could use that dated, timed meeting to see about half an hour of meeting.
There may be some training that needs to happen above that, though, to get everybody up to the same level early on, because obviously different committees will have different work programmes. So this month, Tynedale hasn't got any planning applications, but it may be that North Northumberland does. And so to have it during those slots would mean that everybody gets out of sync. So there's probably a block of training that needs to happen for all councillors at the beginning, and then the top up, that time could be used for top up. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to say that we should have all this. Everybody's noted the lack of training over the last 4 years. And actually, it was all from actually a whole training course is in place for all members. It's from
Well, that's happening. That's being written.
That means everything in depth. So hopefully it will be in depth and not just skimming along the top.
Yeah, and those of us that are councillors after the election can keep an eye on that. And brilliant. Okay, thank you much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure.
Well done.